Askreddit. What's the most painful case of wedding destroyed by family member you've ever witnessed? I got this one nailed. Wedding in North Carolina. Father of the bride is also the pastor. Bride's sister is recovering who has been clean long enough to be trusted to be a bridesmaid. Big mistake. Starts normal enough. Bridal party and bride and groom all up there and pastor, father, starts talking. Then I notice bridesmaid sister slowly falling forward and catching herself a few times. Then she starts swaying even more. Pastor notices but keeps rolling. Swaying gets worse. Friend of the family gets up and goes to stand behind her to catch her in case she falls. At this point she decides it would be a good time to ask her mom, in front row, to borrow some money. She does so loudly. Mom and everyone else ignore her, but she asks again more loudly. It's clear by her speech she is lit at this point. The pastor pauses and asks her to be quiet. Wrong move. She begins to berate her father, the pastor, using language not intended for church. The family friend standing behind her tries to lead her away, but she turns and slaps him. He picks her up caveman style over the shoulder and starts to walk out a nearby door while she is screaming. He walks through the doorway and she grabs the frame and holds it. He breaks away but not before the bridesmaid gets in a few more F-bombs. Then the pastor finishes like nothing happens. One wedding I went to, the pastor started giving the typical marriage is hard work speech. He talks about how many marriages fail and all the people he's counseled through divorce. He goes on about how that on their wedding day, they are just like this couple and who think they are going to make it, but 6 months later they are getting a divorce. I'm trying hard to keep a straight face. The groom is starting to look like he wants to punch the guy, and I can hear people behind me disguising laughing as coughing. I keep expecting him to bring it around to something positive, but he doesn't. 15 minutes of marriage is hard and lots of them don't work. Find out at the reception, he was a family friend with a lifelong unrequited crush on the bride. I asked my dad to walk me down the aisle for my wedding. My dad, well, he's a bit of an odd fellow. Probably has Asperger's, very socially awkward, but he means well, and his heart is in the right place. He was very proud to walk me down the aisle and wanted to make sure he did a good job. So he polled some married female friends of his to get their thoughts on their experience walking down the aisle. Most of them replied with some variation of "oh, there was so much going on and it all went by so fast." I don't remember too much about that part, actually. So my dad, bless his heart, took that to mean their biggest regret was not making the walking down the aisle part memorable. So he decided he would have to make me remember all of this. He explains to me just as we're about to begin the procession. He says, "Don't worry, just follow my instructions." And so we begin to proceed, and just as we near the rows and rows of people, he begins barking instructions. Look over here. Now look over there. Smile at this person. Commit. Commit this to your memory. Now look back to the left. Now the right. Slow the pace down. Now look to the front. Look at fiancé. Smile at fiancé. And so on and so forth, all the way down the aisle. Meanwhile I'm trying to communicate to him through the smile plastered on my face. Yep, it's okay, I think I got it. And everyone watching was shooting us confused looks. Well, I guess it worked, because it's not something I think I'll ever forget. At my brother-in-law's wedding, the grandmother of the bride was asked to say grace before the meal. My father and I happened to be standing by the bar after getting one last drink before it closed during the meal. We figured we would stand there during the 30 seconds or so while she blessed the food. She pulls out 3 pieces of paper, completely full front and back, and starts in on the history of the bride's family. Here is what so and so is doing now, when and where everyone has moved into their current homes. Updates on nieces, nephews, cousins, parents, grandparent, everyone. No one knew she was going to get up there and talk for 15 plus minutes about people nobody cared about. My dad and I actually finished our drinks and ordered 2 more by the time she was done. I refer to it as the 3-drink grace. Okay, here goes. I used to be a cake decorator. I did this for 14 years. I made all kinds of cakes, including wedding cakes. Wedding cakes were considered a big deal with my employer and insisted that I stay for the wedding and or the reception, depending on where the cake was. In 14 years I averaged out to 35 wedding cakes a year, so about 490 wedding events. Of those I'd say about half were wedding/reception combinations. So I've got about 200 weddings I have experienced. Surprisingly, I have never heard anyone speak up during the speak now or forever hold your peace bit. The one story I would love to share with Reddit is this. This was an early spring wedding. The original plans called for an outside wedding, but weather brought us indoors. Other than that, the wedding is proceeding as expected, and we are at the point where the religious figure is asking the groom the do you take whatever to be your lawfully wedded blah blah blah. The groom says no. The crowd goes into gasp, mumble, and whisper mode. Nice. Something different. The groom looks to the back of the room and gives a hand signal to someone near the lights. The place goes black, and a flashlight comes on and the groom is using it to fiddle with an av cart with one of those older projection units that could project onto a wall or screen. The thing comes to life and the groom, the bride, and the bride's family are all lit up in the beam of the projector. The groom announces that what we are about to see was filmed the night before the wedding. He walks over the machine and presses play. Immediately the room is filled with the moanings, groanings, slapping, and slurping sounds of two people really going at it. As the projector finally focused, we see superimposed over the bride and her family is the bride going at it with the best man total slut style. I watched as the bridal party was shocked into complete silence and motionless. The video played for a good 45 seconds to a minute before any of them showed any reaction. The bride crumpled to the ground crying, and the mom and dad pried her off the floor and walked her out. The place is still dark as night except the front. I stand at the back for a quick exit. You learn after the first 3 or so where to hang out for a quick escape. I applauded and then left. I never did find out what happened after that, but I'm happy I got to see that happen. My cousin married a Mormon boy a few years back. Our aunt officiated it, and our entire family was so proud of her and all loved the guy. The guy's mother though was very into her religion, almost convinced the groom's entire side of the family not to go because my cousin had visible tattoos, but the groom and his brothers convinced her not to. At the wedding she broke into a toast that was not planned nor requested, where she essentially said that she hoped that during my cousin's life she could look to the LDS Church for truth and hopefully be able to ask God for forgiveness for her sins and be allowed into heaven. There was a very awkward silence afterward, with even most of her family looking embarrassed, but was broken by my aunt yelling out "We love you, Libby," which prompted lots of cheers. The groom and some other cousins of mine promptly asked the mother to leave, while others of us consoled the bride who was in tears. I worked the most amazing wedding ever. The marriage didn't last 6 hours. I was bartending for the reception. Everything seemed pretty typical and standard as guests arrived, drank, and conversed. The wedding party arrived and everything seemed to be completely normal. Everyone was happy, having fun, etc. When it came time for the formalities, the bar closed and everyone took their seats. The speeches began, with the maid of honor and best man. Everything was going as per usual for a wedding, until the best man finished his speech and the food began to be served. The groom grabbed the microphone after the best man's toast and wished everyone a great night and a nice meal. That's when it hit the fan. After his well wishes, he asked for the attention of his best man and bride. He told them that he knew they were having sex behind his back for the entirety of the engagement and that he would be filing for an annulment on Monday. He thanked everyone for coming and apologized to the father of the bride, saying, "I would have called it off weeks ago, but I figured you would be way more annoyed at your little princess when you couldn't get out of the bill for the reception." He turned to his wife and said, "Damn you," then turned to his best friend and said, "From what I overheard, mine is still bigger than yours." Microphone dropped. Groom out the door. Absolute chaos. Me and my fellow bartender looked on in amazement. We had to go into the kitchen to laugh and high-five. Fallout. Bride ran directly to the bathroom, both furious and inconsolable, with bridesmaids running after. Mother, aunts, and about 20 other women tried breaking into the bathroom, which she apparently locked herself in. She refused to come out until everyone left the facility. She left through a back door with her mother and a few of the bridesmaids after an hour and a half. The best man was surrounded by the groomsmen in what seemed to be a circular questioning of WTF. He made a run for the door, only to be followed by his parents, who had the most saddening look of disgust on their faces. He made it out the door. The groomsmen and the majority of the crowd wanted him gone. For obvious reasons. He got in a cab with his family. Apparently his mother was crying from the moment he was outed until they left the facility. He was gone with his family in a matter of minutes. A lot of people were focused on the bride, and the majority of people were still in disbelief. Outside of the embarrassment and the obvious anger from his immediate family, he got off easily. Though I have no idea what the residual effects were the days following. I imagine he lost quite a few friends and the respect of his family. The bride's father went from complete disbelief, anger, rage, tears, all in a matter of minutes. Nobody would say a word to him. Friends tried to approach, and he pushed everyone away. He kept his composure better than most would from what I saw and heard. Just kind of faded to the back and tried to apologize as people gathered their things and left. Weeks later I found out that my boss did give him a big break on the bill. My boss said he felt so terrible, and as much as he hated to lose money he felt it was the right thing to do. The crowd was like a group of zombies walking out the door. Quiet whispers and shuffling feet, with looks of horror on their faces. I remember one guy started laughing, and his so hit him with a purse. That place was cleared out in about 15 minutes. Bride still waited another hour before she thought she could leave and spare further embarrassment. I had a wedding couple come to see me by appointment to plan the music for their church wedding ceremony. They each brought their respective mothers to the planning session. Right out of the gate, they started arguing over choices for the processional. The groom-to-be wanted something to show off the full organ, whereas the bride-to-be wanted something smaller scaled and gentle. There was no middle ground, no matter what organ pieces I showed them. Then, of course, their mothers took sides and further intensified their bickering, even though I asked them politely to let the couple choose their own selections. In the end, it really wasn't about the choice of music. It was about a fundamental crack in the foundation of their soon-to-be marriage, unwillingness to compromise, or to even hear what the other was attempting to convey. Sadly, their marriage ended in divorce in less than 2 years. How they made it that long I'll never know. Not a planner, but a photographer. Bride and groom both lovely people, but the groom's mother, at the reception she got so drunk that she leaned over in her chair and just puked on the floor. She spent the next 2 hours wailing and crying because she told everybody, thought her son deserved better. As I was packing equipment back into my car, I spotted Mill in the bushes, dress around her head, legs in the air and a group of people trying to get her out. I later found out that she shit herself at a later point in the evening, and the bride spent time cleaning her up. Didn't think the marriage would survive with a toxic Mill like that around. Then I saw on social media that the bride and groom moved overseas, far away from their families. I love a happy ending. Not a wedding planner, but I got to see my former mother-in-law and aunt-in-law get into a fist fight before my wedding. Almost saw my now ex-wife and sister get in a fight too. Cause my mother was doing all of the work and her family was being lazy as hell. We lasted 11 years. This just reminding me of the Mill and Ale fist fight. Nothing like seeing two dressed up obese southern ladies drunk off their asses fighting. I was like, yay, this is turning out to be awesome. And they were putting some oomph in those fists. Years ago I was a waitress at a fancy restaurant where we regularly had weddings. One night we had this massive wedding party. His side was one of those families with loads of money, but not an ounce of class. Just rowdy, loud and incredibly rude, making sure to let everyone know how rich they were. She was a quiet shy girl with a small family full of boring mousy types. As the night progressed his family just got drunker and louder as hers hid in the corners, visibly annoyed. At one stage the groom grabbed the microphone and did a heavily intoxicated version of Frank Sinatra's My Way whilst his whole family cheered him on. Afterwards he turned to his bride and slid over the speakers, "Tonight, we will do it my way, Whiffy," and then proceeded to make doggy style thrusting gestures. The bride flushed bright red, got up and walked out, her mum on her heels. She didn't come back. The groom stayed and got so trashed his disgusting family had to carry him out at the end of the night. It was spectacular. They didn't last long.